Well, a new United Nations report is criticizing Canada's temporary foreign workers program. And for the latest details on this story, let's bring in CTV's Colton Praill. We appreciate the update as always. And I'm just reading some of the criticism from some UN officials. One official denounced Canada's foreign worker program as, quote, a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery. Not mincing words there. Tell us about this report.
Absolutely not, Jimmy. Yeah, this is a report from the Special Rapporteur on contemporary slavery, I should say, for the UN. And he came to Canada last year. He visited a number of different cities, talked with a number of different officials, governments. He talked with industry, with labor groups, with temporary workers themselves, and he put together a large report across the board, but a large section of it focuses on the temporary foreign worker program, and as you point out, yes, refers to it as a form and a breeding ground for contemporary slavery. Really, the main focus of this report is specifically on closed work permits or employer-specific work permits, and what this is it ties temporary workers to one specific employer, and this report says that the creation of those agreements fosters an environment where there is dependency for the temporary workers on their employer, but it also gives their employer controls over things like their workers' housing, their health care, their migration status. And the carry-on effect from that is that there are multiple reports of abuses, whether that be in working conditions, whether that be physical abuse, sexual abuse, overworked, wage theft, controlling documents or keeping documents so that workers can't leave, can't report any of these abuses. There's fear to do so. It also talks about some of the challenges that we've seen as far as a lack of PPE and hazardous conditions, housing where it's vastly overcrowded. There are dozens of people using a single washroom, for example. It is a number of issues fostered in large part by this power imbalance. And so the report focuses specifically on that and calls for an end of that type of work agreement. But it also calls out that the way the program is structured in Canada doesn't really work. There's an issue at its core with the federalism. The jurisdictional neglect is how this report phrases it, where the federal government runs this program through 3 different ministries. But if there are ever any issues for the workers themselves about their health, about labor conditions, about employment, they have to go to the provinces with whom they're working. And there were multiple instances where the provinces didn't try to resolve those issues because they felt like it was outside of their jurisdiction, even though that's not the case.
What does the report say when it comes to, making these workers permanent resident status and how necessary it is to end a lot of this exploitation? Were there any recommendations in that regard?
Absolutely. That is one of the key recommendations, actually, is but if you can give these workers a pathway to permanent residency, it opens up healthcare and options for these people in a way that they don't currently have. They wouldn't have to go through private insurance provided by the employers. They would have access to the Canadian healthcare system, and that alone would be incredibly beneficial. But it also points to the fact that this work, in large part, is happening year over year. It's so frequently in the fruit and agriculture sector, it's not going anywhere. And so by opening up a permanent residency pathway for these workers, you could actually solve some of the labor shortages in Canada. Specifically, it talks about how the absence, I should say, of that pathway to permanent residency increases the vulnerabilities for these migrant workers. And so by creating that pathway and also reforming the way that this program is handled from the top down and creating one sort of body that would oversee all of this, they say you could reduce a large part of the vulnerabilities that these workers are exposed to.
CTV's Colton Praill, appreciate that report. Thank you.